If I may have everyone's attention for a moment, please. The service will begin shortly. At this time, I'm going to ask that anyone present in possession of a cellular device, if you kindly silence it or turn it off at this time. Thank you.
To your son. I'm Lori.
We're gonna start the service.
I know.
Sheviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, ki mini balemot. Lachen samach libi, veyagel kevodi. אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול. לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת. תודיעני אורך חיים, סובה שמחות את פניך. נעימות במנחה נצח, במנחה נצח.
Begin this morning with words of gratitude, with words of thanks and love. Thank you to all of you who are here this morning. Thank you to all of you who are joining us online, who have sent your well wishes, who have sent your kind memories, who have sent the blessings of your heart. Vicky told me that Jak was not just a world traveler, that they did not just go around the world, they lived in the world. Your presence here this morning, both physical and spiritual, wherever you are in the world, speaks to the fact that everywhere they went, they made friends. Everywhere they went, they made relationships. And it is that sweet power of memory now. It is that sweet power of memory that stays with us, that makes the words, Zichronam livracha, his memory is a blessing. That is what makes those words true. Death has taken our beloved Jak. And our friends, this family, grieves in a darkened world. In their silence, we hear lamentation, and in their tears, we see loneliness. And we pray that in their sorrow, they find your presence, the presence of you, their loving friends, and the presence of you. O God, hear them, O God. Hear them and be with them. Jack's love united us in life, and death does not end his blessings. His companionship that we shared along life's path, it continues now in the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and his mind, these things that brought us such joy, his wit, his humor, his endless truth-telling, his endless pharmacy, his brilliant mind, the gift that he shared all over the world, but more than his brilliant mind, his incredible heart that he shared with his family most of all, but with his friends almost as deeply. These things are now our most precious remembrance. And it is for these things and more that we give thanks to God. In this time of our grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred text that it may tell us an ever new message of God's nearness, that we may hear of our kinship with our Creator in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, and in life as in death. To share some of these words of our tradition, it is my pleasure to invite Chazan Danny Shiprut to the Bima. Chazan Danny sang at Vicky and Jack's wedding. He sang at Joshua and Ellie's wedding. And I'm not sure, Boris and Monica, you didn't mention it. No? 2 out of 3 is really good. And he's traveled all the way from Ottawa to honor his friend with the words of the Psalms. Chazan.
מזמור לדוד, אבו לאדוני בנרים, אבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, אבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני באדרת קודש. כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים, אדוני על המים רבים, כל אדוני בכוח. כל אדוני באדר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים, ושבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל. לבנון וסיניון כמו ורמים, כל אדוני עוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש. כל אדוני יחולל איילות, ויחשוף יערות, ובחלו כולו מרכבות. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא יחסר, בינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני, נפשי ישובב ינהני, במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיצל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי, נשענת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב בחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
We know how meaningful it is to hear those sounds in this space at this time, to honor Jak's heritage, his Sephardic pride, the sounds of the Istanbul, the Turkish Jewish community. Esa enai leharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri mi'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz, al yiten lamot raglecha al yanum shomrecha. Hine, lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shmarcha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Yumam hashemesh, lo yikacha v'yarech balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitecha uvoecha, me'ata v'yad olam. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, who is the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector does not slumber, for the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection now at your right hand. And the sun will no longer strike you by day, nor the moon by night. Know this, God will guard you. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. Our rabbis teach us that there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasize that the crown of a good name is greater than them all. The book of Ecclesiastes states, Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. A good name is more valuable than the most precious oil. Wealth, health, life itself each pass away, but a good name lives forever. It is in this view that the Talmud teaches us that monuments are not erected for the righteous because the deeds of the righteous are memorials. They are remembered. They are revered for the love that they have shown, for the kindness that they have done, for the good that they have given to our world, because they are shining examples of what it means to be a tzaddik. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Hishem Adonai Mevorach. God has given, God has taken, blessed is the name of God. We are an ancient people, and we are all too well acquainted with grief, We have walked too many times in the valley of the shadows. Death, sorrow, these things are not strangers to us, but our centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave. And we find our strength in community and in faith. And it is so with Job that we say, Adonai Natan, God you gave. You gave us Jack, he will never be forgotten, and for all that was good, all that was enduring in his life, we give you the deepest thanks of our hearts. Va'adonai lakach. And God, you have taken. And so now we pray for strength. Strength and courage to take the brokenness of our hearts and to reforge them anew, that we may find friendship and love, memory. And it's from that place that we will say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. We bless your name, God, now, today, and always. We take a moment for silent prayer and memory, and may these words and meditations in our hearts be acceptable in the sight of God, who is our strength and our Redeemer. To begin our eulogies, our memorials, our words of love and affection, Jack's grandson, Jack, will offer some words about his beloved grandfather.
My grandfather, Jacques, was a great man. It really warms my heart that all of you joined us on this very sad day. Firstly, I'm really proud to be his grandson. I know that I'm very lucky to be named after him, and this makes me feel very special. Just want to give my thanks to all of the lovely people who helped out my family and my grandfather. I think the support really helped him push through the terrible disease. My Pepe was an amazing cook, and this kickstarted my love for cooking. One day, I hope to be as talented as a chef as him and make him proud. Secondly, my favorite memory of him is when we went to France when I was little. He would take me by the hand as we walked in the streets of Paris to the bakery and smell all of the fresh bread. Together, we would gobble down the tastiest pastries. Also, I loved sitting on his lap when I was little after school and telling him about my day. On my last note, I just wanted to mention that I'll be doing a fundraiser for the Princess Margaret Hospital for their cancer research program. Because of how hard the doctors worked day and night, so I got to see him one more time. One last time, thanks so much for being here. Pepe, I want you to know how much Max and I love you and how much we're gonna miss you.
Joshua.
Thank you for
joining us today to celebrate my indomitable father, Jak Jabes. Même pour moi qui aime faire des discours, je me trouve à manquer de mots. Je pense aux paroles de Victor Hugo, mon père, ce héros au sourire si doux. His was an extraordinary life, from Istanbul to Lawrence, Kansas, to Ottawa, Paris, Manila, Bangkok, Singapore, and Toronto. He lived a life far from what his childhood script might presage. His life was marked by learning, family, and relationships. I'd like to touch on each of these. A bright student, he spoke multiple languages at home at a very young age, and later earned scholarships and attended the prestigious British High School in Istanbul, followed by Robert College. Then he was a Fulbright scholar at the University of Kansas, where he earned his PhD. This high academic bar was never easy to live up to, but ensured that education was prized in our home. I know many of my dad's friends from those years are listening to us from around the world. On one trip back to Istanbul years ago, my parents took us to the Grand Bazaar, where Dad ran into one of his old acquaintances in a leather shop. And after catching up, she turned and said, "Your dad is smart." No, I mean like really smart. No one left an encounter with our father immune from his personality or opinions. These experiences could happen anywhere, as my father would bluntly share his views on food, politics, or people. This could have comical tones, as when he met my future wife and remarked, "Sure, you're a doctor and you help people, but as a gynecologist, you only help half the people." Bear in mind, this is the first time he met Ellie. There was one area of his life where my father displayed selfless devotion, and this was in his love for our mother. They would still hold hands, read together, and plan to spend time together. They traveled across continents and shared incredible experiences. They were an amazing team. A team where the roles were sometimes reversed. We would joke that at times he was the Jewish mother, given how much he would worry about things. He loved my mother unconditionally and would, through his actions, show his love for her. I think this example from a young age made me want to be a good husband. My father and I shared a love of food, politics, and people. He was mildly horrified when I declared my partisan allegiance at an early age and warned me about the risks of party politics. He was patient and supportive when regime change occurred. His quiet pride in our accomplishments as his children and later grandchildren was palpable. Grandfatherhood was a welcome and joyous milestone for my dad. He reveled in cuddling and playing with Jack and Max. His hopes for them reigned supreme. He even attended hockey games and played for hours on end with them. Rolling around the floor, he became almost childlike in his playfulness. As his son, I was bemused, as my memories center on firm rules and high expectations. Growing up, our friends would joke that while they would talk back to their parents, they would not dream of doing that with our dad. Il avait une force de caractère hors du commun, as one of my high school friends would remind me. My dad was not one for pomp or ceremony, and he could be matter-of-factly about the challenges of life. Likely born from losing his father at a young age, he did not take for granted the gift of time. He embraced people and experiences that expanded his perspective on the world. He and my mother embraced adventures and formed new, meaningful relationships over the years. I now understand how these have helped sustain them at this time. Their wide circle of friends has reached out over the last few weeks to remind us how grateful they were for his friendship, humor, sage counsel, and reliable support over the years. We are, as a family, thankful at this difficult time for the support of our community and the many communities that our parents touched. They're not limited to the people in this room or even the folks online, as my parents' networks of friends and relations extended across provinces, countries, and continents. We look to you here today, listening and watching online, to keep his memory alive. Pour tous ceux qui, comme nous, arrivent difficilement à imaginer un monde sans lui, je vous demande de partager dans les jours et semaines qui suivent vos souvenirs de mon père. Babamın en eski çocukluk arkadaşlarına onunla ilgili anılarınızı, hikayelerinizi, resimlerinizi bizimle paylaşmaya devam etmenizi rica ediyorum. Despite his relatively small physical stature, our father looms large, and this has been a difficult time for my brother and I. The older we get, the smarter our father seems to get. We're an unabashedly Mediterranean, tactile family with lots of hugs and loud arguments, opinions, and emotions. And when it comes to the love we transmit and feel, I'm heartened by the fundamental and unquestioned knowledge that my father loved us and was loved by all of us. I know this because I told him repeatedly, "Je t'aime, Papa." In typical Jak Jabes fashion, when I last said this to him at the hospital a few days ago, he looked me in the eye and calmly answered, "I know." This knowledge sustains me and should sustain us all. He was loved deeply and loved us. Je t'aime, Papa.
Thank you all for coming today, and to those joining virtually, thank you for being with us in spirit. Merci à tous d'être venus aujourd'hui, et surtout aux nombreux qui nous rejoignent virtuellement, du Canada, de la France, de la Turquie, et encore, j'en oublie. Notre famille apprécie votre soutien dans ce moment difficile. We are blessed with your presence. Some of you came from very far to be with us on such short notice, and I'm so thankful. As my brother said, your stories of our father, he said that in Turkish, but your stories of our father have been an immense comfort to our small family, and I really do hope you'll continue sharing them with us in the days to come. As my nephew and my father's namesake just said, my father was a great man. Un grand homme, as my brother said. And great how, I will tell you. He had great taste, great wit, intellect, great determination to fight for himself, his family, his friends, far and wide, and finally great principles, values, and expectations of us, and even the world when it didn't meet his satisfaction, which was often. He used these traits to live a life that was so grand. My friends will tell you that all of my best stories come from him. He inspired me every day and continues to inspire me now. When I think of my dad, it's words like excellence, style, taste that actually come to mind. He was effortlessly cool, something you don't usually associate with fathers. And yet, he always knew the best places to eat, the best film to watch, the best art to appreciate. He once took me and my friends to the best new restaurant in Seattle, which he knew about despite living on the other side of the world, before all of us. And it was an amazing restaurant. Some of those people are here today. And he always had the coolest shoes, socks, and those glasses. I forgot to bring them today. He came to visit me in San Francisco and took a group of friends to the best eyewear store in San Francisco, which also we didn't know about. And we looked at everything in there as, way too avant-garde for any of us. And instead of selling us anything, the shopkeeper just wanted to learn about his glasses. He didn't want to sell him anything. In a hospital gown at Princess Margaret Hospital, I was there every day for the last 3 weeks, and he got compliments on his glasses multiple times per day. I think at one point he was putting them on not to look at us, but to make sure he got those compliments. I can't know for sure, but whatever the thing, he was always ahead of us. He usually took me a year or two to realize he was right and follow in his footsteps. Even the shoes I'm wearing now were his suggestion. And it wasn't just his style. It was excellence in everything. Art, food, music, film, theater, literature. He knew what the best was. And he shared it with all of us. All of you. Sometimes even when you didn't want to hear it. My name itself reflected his love for great Russian literature. The great taste, it didn't come from anywhere. It came from his brilliant mind. My father had a knack for knowing better. A Jabes family trait that can be frustrating, but is rarely wrong. It can be tough to live with a Jabes, especially, I imagine, for our partners, whether that's my mother, Ellie, or Monica. We declare truths others might call opinions. And you have to be tenacious to convince us otherwise. What good books are, what good oysters are, what good wine is, and on and on. This stubbornness can be challenging, but it was rooted for him in generosity. He wanted everyone to experience the best in life. As my brother said, my father's story is one of relentless perseverance. After he lost his own father at 16, he supported his mother, Esti, and his sister, Rachel, while excelling academically. In Ladino, there's a saying, de la espina nace la rosa. From the thorn, the rose is born. From the top schools in Istanbul to earning a scholarship to pursuing his PhD, he showed me that dedication makes anything possible. When I asked him about Woodstock or the moon landing, because he was in the US in the summer of '69, he said he was busy doing research, although it was on a beach in Micronesia. He fought for what mattered, his career, his values, and most of all, his family. He moved mountains to ensure we receive the best education and opportunities. This was his paramount value, I think an eminently Jewish value of education. I think he was still a little disappointed that I haven't become a professor myself. He was so devoted to our family and his friends. He and my mom have been virtually inseparable for 50 years. I barely have a photo of him that isn't the two of them. I actually was trying to find some. His love was expressed, like my brother said, not in words, but mostly through actions. Quiet, but unwavering. I hear this is a Sephardic way. He pushed us to strive, but we never doubted his love and devotion to our happiness. And that would have been enough. Dayenu. But as Papi to his grandkids, he became the best version of himself. Joshua talked about him getting on the floor. I remember he deputized me to crawl on the floor with him to build model train sets with the boys, something I would never have believed. He exuded more fun, he was more laid back, all while still passing on his famous discipline. When we were kids, he actually taught us Turkish army stances, rahat, hazırol, rather than play with trains. Turns out he didn't need the army training. Jack and Max never misbehaved with Pepe. My father, he said it even just a few days ago, loved the sea. There's a quote by André Gide, an alumnus of our school that he sent us to. He said, "On ne découvre pas de terre nouvelle sans consentir à perdre de vue, d'abord et longtemps, tout rivage." One does not discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the shore for a very long time. He discovered many new lands in his epic life, impacting not just our family, but students and colleagues and friends and even nations. One of my favorite objects in my parents' house is a coin gifted to him by Hungary for helping them join the European Union. The price of his ambitions and mine was spending much of our lives far, far away from each other. Our calls were never frequent enough. As Joshua said, he was a bit of a Jewish mother. But when we would do them, they would go on for hours. I think he would pretend to have computer problems as an excuse. It was a really good one. It worked every time. And even before the internet, the world was a small place for my parents, with feet everywhere. But I think he missed the shore. No matter what I've achieved, he worried about me and our mom, even in his final days. But I want him to know we'll be okay. I hope we made him as proud of us as we are of him. If I ever need to make a friend, I'll just tell another story of his life. I hope he's enjoying the shore now. Thank you.
Our angels spend much of their time sleeping. In their dreams, they tear down the new houses by the sea, and they build up old ones in their place. No matter how long they may sleep, 100, 200 years, 10 centuries, it is not too much. The first to wake up takes the torch, the same torch that has been handed down, and adds a drop of oil to the lamp, blesses the eternal light, and then recalls the name of every other angel. And one by one, as they are remembered, they awaken. For them, as for us, there is nothing more beautiful than memory. Jak was born in Istanbul. His parents had just returned from pre-state Israel. He and his beloved sister Rachel were raised there, at the very center of the Turkish Jewish community, a community he remained proud of and dedicated to throughout his entire life. He was of quick mind. He was an exceptional student. He earned the awards and scholarships you heard about that from a young age took him far from home and helped him earn that Shem Tov, that good name which followed him both personally and professionally throughout his entire life. When his father, Leon, died young, he grew up. And he grew up perhaps a little too early to take on new roles inside of his family, like walking his sister down the aisle at her wedding, or providing for his family as best he could, as he quickly became the adult. As a teenager, he spent his summer vacations at, and forgive my Turkish pronunciation, Burgaz, which is a princess island. Vicky and Joshua kindly described it to me as the Muskoka of Istanbul. It provided a beautiful, picturesque backdrop and provided a most fateful meeting. On Burgaz, the children were deposited to spend the summer days in play and relaxation, while fathers and working mothers were ferried back to the city. And Vicky recalls that when she met Jak there, she was about 13 years old, and their families met. She clearly made quite the impression, because as the story goes, years and years later, she sent him a message. She heard that he was studying in the USA for his PhD, and she was getting ready to visit Montreal. Perhaps he would see her while she was in North America. In her mind, these locations were naturally quite close. Canada, the USA, they are right next to each other. What she didn't realize and what you had heard is that Jak was studying in Kansas, a full day's 24 hours drive from Montreal. And yet, he got in the car, He drove through the night. He came, he met her, and romance blossomed, and they got married. And then she very quickly told him that his life as a student of the academy would soon be coming to an end, and he would need to finish his PhD, which he did in a nearly record-breaking 5 years. They had an incredible partnership that lasted 50 years this year. He was a team player. She was his partner in all things. He cooked, he cleaned, he was a great keeper of the house, and of course, a great romantic, though not perhaps in the most saccharine and public kind of way. It was through his every quiet action that he demonstrated love and affection and pride in his most beloved bride and in his best friend. Joshua recalls that his father did not keep private friendships from his wife. Their friends were their friends, and those friends lived in every corner of the world. Vicky told me last night, quote, "The world was a small place for us." And those of you who have made the journey to be here with us today or are joining us from the four corners of the world online, you are proof of that. Joshua and Boris shared such beautiful, elegant stories about him as father. But what's equally important to know is how proud he was of his sons. Each accomplishment, each success put stars in his eyes. And even when he didn't see personal benefit in being directly involved with an activity or an organization or a cause or even a community, if his children or his wife cared about it, suddenly it mattered to him, because that's the importance and value of family. And this was doubly true not just with organizations, but especially with people. You heard about Ellie's first interesting truth-telling meeting with Jak, something that they fit in the 6 week of dating, but before 6-month period when the parents would next be in town. And from that excellent bit of "you only help half the people" came unfiltered love. Unfiltered love and pride, as if she was his own flesh and blood. A feeling that is mutual. And there was also such a deep and special, meaningful bond with his daughter-in-law, Monica, who has patiently and lovingly supported this entire family, especially Boris, as he dropped everything to be here for the last 3 weeks. And for the cousins, Charles, who has been here throughout from the days in France, demonstrating the lasting love and affection that Jak felt for every element, every branch of his family, and Murat, and Jen, and Christille, and Rita, and Mikhail. The love he felt for all of you is indescribable. And then, of course, Jak and Max. You are the boys that brought him back to Canada. Jak had 20-year careers, and unlike some people who have a 20-year career, he had 2 20-year careers. One which brought him to Canada, and one which brought him to the rest of the world. Quote, "Roots were hard for us," is another of these great sayings that Vicky just plops down like magic. But as much as he loved to be that citizen, never visitor of the world, a dweller, a resident in beautiful places, as much as he loved the city of light, and as much as it stole his heart, he loved his grandchildren more. He was papi, involved and proud and dedicated at every hockey game, at every event, and you heard repeatedly that he was, perhaps as a surprise to you, a roll around on the floor sort of grandfather, the kind that makes a fool of himself to delight his grandchildren. And delight them he did. You gave him so much joy, and you were his joy. There is a teaching from our tradition that asks us to imagine a child and a grandfather playing on the floor. They're playing a game of horsey, where the beloved grandchild rides on the grandparent's back. And suddenly, teaches the rabbi, the door opens and someone else walks into the room. And this third person knows the grandparent from their other life, from their outside life, their formal life. And they say to them, "How can a person such as you act like this? Have you forgotten how dignified and intelligent and cultured you are?" And the grandfather responds and says, "But this is what my grandchild wants." And the visitor responds, "And should children get everything they want?" But the grandfather simply smiles and says, "No, you don't understand. When I saw how much they wanted it, I wanted it too." And it is this mashal, it is this parable that teaches us about our relationship to the will and love of God. When we act with love, God's self responds with love. This is what we mean when we say, "Ken yehi ratzon." May it be God's will. It is this image of pure love and delight that we recall now, as we remember Jak and as we say, "Ken yehi ratzon." May this be your will, O God, to embrace his soul as he embraced us, to watch over him forever as he cared for us, and to bring him into the shadow of your wings. Please rise. Alma alei rachamim.
El male rachamim shochem b'meromim hametzeh menucha nechona tachat kanfei השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת יעקב בן אריה ואסתר שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו אנה בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו